I've been wanting to talk about this for a while because I think I have a lot of insights to share on this matter of dating as a neurodivergent woman. I'm going to start this off by saying I don't have a formal diagnosis, guys. Okay. But my suspicion here, as I've gotten older and I started to notice what's going on, I suspect strongly that I have ADHD, but not the like TikTok ADHD or like the I'm so awkward and quirky ADHD. No, I mean like severe brain fog when I'm on my period kind of ADHD. I mean the kind of ADHD where I experienced this thing where it's now making sense to me why I describe myself as grey asexual and why I'm able to be alone for long periods of time. I think it's because when you are on the spectrum and you're highly sensitive to the environment around you, and if you've been used to masking for your whole life, when you finally have the opportunity to unmask, i.e., to just like relax into your actual self when no one's around, you really value that. And I like that a lot for myself. I don't really like the idea of people coming over, and that sounds so horrible to say. It's not because I don't like my friends or my family. It's more just like when I say I don't like the idea of people coming over, it's more just because I know that I have to be switched on in a way where, like, once they go home, I'm like, oh my God, okay, I can relax. And this sounds really horrible to say, but the reason why I feel like I have to say it is because I know someone else feels that way. And I promise you, this links into dating men. But I really want to extra mega clarify that when I say that I don't like people coming over, it's not that I don't like my friends. I love it when my friends come over, especially when they've given me the motivation to tidy up. Because that's another thing with ADHD, right? I don't know about you guys who might be on the spectrum as well, but see, when your place gets messy, the only motivation is to invite someone over. Because if I just tell myself I need to tidy my place, because it's just me, I can let that linger for a while. But if I know that, okay, I've put a date in the diary for my friend to come over in 3 days' time, that means I've got 72 hours to tidy this place up. And that normally works. And I get such a good like dopamine, endorphins, serotonin, whatever people call it, that combination of the good feelings of like, oh, my friend's coming over and I've tidied my place. I feel so good about this because then when my friend goes, like, I've got a tidy place, which means I'm going to be extra productive for a while until this lasts. I'm going to be extra productive for a while. I'm going to feel a sense of serenity. The air can move through my living space easier. This will only last a very short while though, but it's great while it's here because I go through cycles where like things just creep back up to where they were. The mess just finds it. I don't know how it happens, guys. The mess just finds itself again. And I'm one person. Like, I know this is why I say I can't date a broke man. I can't marry a broke man because I know what kind of lifestyle I want to live. I'm going to need to live a lifestyle where there's always cleaners. This is not me being like, I'm a diva. I don't like cleaning. I need to have a housekeeper. No, no, no. This is like an actual like health expense. If I could put a cleaner on my health insurance as an expense, I would, because I actually cannot. I don't know how people do it. Like, what do you mean to tell me you have ADHD and you're a single mom? What? What do you mean because me just being a singular person, it doesn't take much for me to become overstimulated, and that can really change my mood very quickly. And I can become very passive and very snappy and not very nice to be around when I'm hungry and I'm bored, or like I've got like a sneeze that's coming, but the sneeze isn't really coming. And so it's making me feel very unsettled in my being. And then like the person I'm talking to is taking long to say what they want to say. And I'm just like, can you just hurry up, please? Like, I just feel very irritable. If I had a kid, I would genuinely be what you call a bad mother. Like, if I didn't have the help I know I need. And the help I know I need is I'm going to need cleaning staff, cooking staff. I'm going to need lots and lots of money to, sustain the lifestyle that I know that I require. Okay? Because when I need to emotionally regulate myself, the things that I use, I got very cool gadgets, right? Like, I know I know that I sound very crazy right now, but this is my truth, and I promise we're going somewhere with this topic, because I think for neurodivergent women, yeah, one thing that I think we need to honor more is our personal space. I'm not saying that as in tidy your place more. No. What I'm saying as in honoring your personal space is, don't just be letting men into your space anyhow, because what happens is when things are going well, you're unknowingly creating these neuro pathways in your house, your living space, where that chair he always sits on, like, oh, it's so cute when he leaves and you're like, oh my God, he was here, and like he was sat on that chair, and you're like revisiting all the moments you've had together in your room or in your flat. Or that one time when he came over and cooked for me, and then we had this really fun time, and like it was so cute. Or, you know, the more obvious, like you guys fucking in your bed and stuff like that, or on your chair. And then when things go wrong with that guy, you're going to be having actual, I can't even call it demons, but like the non-visible residue of that man being in your space. Like, now you can't even look at that chair the same, because you're remembering that he used to sit there all the time. And now when you're in your kitchen, you feel this weird presence of like grief. Not grief is a reach, boy, but like, you know, when you're grieving the end of something that you really put a lot of stock into. Because neurodivergent women have a thing with making men their special interest. And we will get into that in this conversation. But I'm saying all this to say, right, as a neurodivergent person who hasn't got a formal diagnosis, I know I'm neurodivergent. I just know it. And the reason why I'm scared to get the formal diagnosis is because I'm actually one of those neurodivergent people that has managed to slip under the radar really, really well. Extremely intelligent, very, very especially emotionally. I'm very emotionally intelligent. Okay. And I can say that with my chest, because I have seen myself engaging in scenarios, and I'm very proud of how I've handled it on the other side, right? So I'm extremely emotionally intelligent. I'm extremely intelligent on paper, whatever you want to call that. Very intelligent in that respect. That's not to say that people who are on the spectrum are not intelligent, but where I'm going with this is the only thing that I struggled with at school was maths, and it used to give me severe panic attacks. Just like being in, like even thinking about it just makes me feel weird. Like just being in maths class and feeling really stupid and crying into my textbook. I remember that. Like, I didn't know that back then what I was having was a panic attack, but now I know that it's a panic attack now that I'm an adult. But I used to experience that a lot at school. But because I was A star / A student everywhere else, there was no reason for people to investigate that. Also, I've actually never lost my keys. Like, I'm incredibly responsible when it comes to my keys. For some reason, I've always been just like hypervigilant of my keys, because if I lose my keys, what's gonna happen? Like, how am I gonna handle that? Like, people who just lose their keys on a night out, I'm like, how is that not uprooted your whole life? Like, how have you not had the panic attack that will finally finish you once and for all? I don't get that. People will be like, haha, I'm so goofy, I lost my phone on a night out. I'm like, what? I have actually quite literally never lost my phone before on a night out. I might have misplaced my phone in my house, but that's different because I'm in my house. Like, at some point, I'm going to find it in it. But it means, tell me you're going on a night out and you just say, oh, whoopsie, I'm so silly. No, not me. Guys, I'm so hypervigilant, yeah? So hypervigilant. Like, even when I'm out, I enjoy getting socially drunk, but I'm not the kind of person that enjoys like, oh my God, I'm so drunk that I'm like, each step feels like, am I going to make it? I'm slurring my words. Like, it's not that serious. I don't actually like the feeling of being drunk. I like the feeling of other things, which I'm not going to say on this podcast, but you know, let's just call it cabbages and kale, especially when it's mixed with a lovely, yummy chocolate, a really nice vegan chocolate. Anyway, not into alcohol, but I can drink it socially. But where I'm going with this is like, you know, when I look at the key traits of being neurodivergent enough to seek an examination or an assessment, it's things like forgets keys and is very forgetful. What's the other one? Can't tell the time. Now, for me, I can't really tell the time properly on an analog clock, but I can, look at my phone if it's got the digital numbers. That's something where I can't tell if that's neurodivergent or if that's just being a millennial who doesn't actually need to look at clocks when I've got like 500 million devices that show me digital time. But I do struggle with, like, is that 2:30 or is that like, what is that? Is that 1:30 or 2:30? Like, I struggle with that. Not gonna lie. But that doesn't feel like it's enough for me to be like, oh, I need to seek an assessment for neurodivergence because, oh my goodness, it's really impacting my life. Or even another trait that they say that is common with neurodivergent people is problems with spelling and reading. Guys, I have no issue with spelling and reading. The issue I have with reading is I don't actually enjoy reading books. When I read a page, by the time I've gotten to the end of the page, I have to read that page all over again because I can't really recall what I just read. Like, reading feels like an actual chore. And that's why my Sunday Times #1 best-selling book, What a Time to Be Alone, was designed for people who don't like to read. Because I don't like reading. It's really, really ironic that a Sunday Times #1 best-selling author who has sold literally over 100,000 books doesn't like reading. But that's why my book did really well, because I designed it for those who don't fucking like reading. I don't like reading, guys. I really don't like reading. What I prefer is audio. Do you know what I really enjoy? Like, you know, the audio essays, like, you know, the YouTubers that, like, they call it audio essays where they're just holding a microphone and they're talking their shit about a particular topic. That's my jam. I love that because I like to passively take in information. I'm also a very visual and practical learner. And also, for some reason, I struggle with so pole dancing and going to dance classes made me realize how much I struggle with, like, flipping mirror images in my head. So, like, if someone is teaching you a dance routine, usually there's a big mirror in front of everyone so that you can see the teacher, so you can copy the moves. But for some reason, if she's moving her right hand, unless she's wearing like some sort of wristband or something that's going to make it super clear that that's her right hand, my brain really struggles to, like, translate that movement. And sometimes the most arbitrary, most simplest of dance routines, I can't grasp it. What will take people 2 hours to learn, I need 2 days of constant repetition. And I find dance classes can be quite triggering for me as well. Like, I've had several panic attacks where I've gone to dance classes, like, as in, like, dance choreo routine classes for fun, even pole classes as well, where it's like learning a choreo routine. And I've walked out and I've just gone to the toilet to cry because I'm like, oh, this is taking me back to maths class where I feel stupid and I feel like I'm the only one asking questions, and I no matter how many times I ask the question, it's not sitting in for me. Like, it's not working. It's so weird. But I'm saying all this to say, as a neurodivergent woman who dates men, there's a lot that we don't really talk about when it comes to, number one, pattern recognition. This is what I call a key strength in being neurodiverse, right? Pattern recognition. So pattern recognition is where it's almost like, okay, the negative or the negative version of pattern recognition is, oh, everyone always leaves me. Oh, I always end up being the person who falls to the back of the group, or, you know, no one ever really cares about me. Where. Like, the pattern recognition thing of, you enter relationships and it's almost like you can already identify that there's a pattern happening here and you know what that pattern is leading to. But for some reason, what you're not learning from your pattern recognition skills is use that same pattern recognition skills to put yourself in situations where you're actually one step ahead. So what I mean by that is, I use pattern recognition as a means of survival when dating men, because men are dangerous and they murder women, right? But aside from that, men can derail you from your life, your future, your self-esteem, and all the things that keep you functioning as a human being that deserves to be happy. So with pattern recognition, how I use that when I'm dating men, I look out for the smallest micro nuanced things. One of the pattern recognition things is, if a man just complains to me about money, or if he makes a joke about the recession, or he makes a joke about, like, cause he lives. Cause he lives, if you're not British, cause he lives is just cost of living. But, like, cause he lives is just a slang way to say it. If you're making jokes about cost of living and times are hard, I'm going to assume things are hard for you, which means that you won't be able to date me because it's expensive to date me. and I wouldn't want to add any problems to your plate. So once I hear you making jokes about financial difficulty, I'm going to accept that this is phase one of a pattern that will eventually lead to the result of me either splitting bills with this man, or this man making me feel like a burden to him for having high standards that he can't meet. And in effect, I will gaslight myself out of my own standards. No, I'm not doing it. Another way that I use pattern recognition to my own benefit and to my own empowerment and strength as a neurodivergent woman is, the positive side is, I look out for the patterns that lead me to the thing that I want. And I hone in on that and I study it. I'm really, really, really good at studying men. And it doesn't need to take me that long. Because I've studied men so many times, I know what patterns to look out for. And I'm glad I have that in me. I really do. Because you know what's interesting about being neurodivergent is we're prone to developing special interests. And we're really passionate about our special interests. Now, for me, for a long time, astrology was a special interest of mine. I came across astrology in the pandemic. Of course, astrology was something I was always aware of, but in the pandemic, I really became interested in it. And I studied every single star sign. I studied every single planet associated with every single star sign. I studied every single modality of every single star sign. I studied every single element pertaining to earth, wind, fire, water, and how that influences a star sign. I studied, it was a deep special interest to the point where now I love that it was a special interest, because now when I come across people and I want to just ask about their star sign, or like I want to use astrology for my own personal use or to understand men, I don't use it as a thing to be like, oh no, he's a Scorpio, we're not compatible, or oh, he's a Taurus, he's definitely going to look after me. No, if I come across a guy who's a Scorpio and there's been some sort of attraction expressed between both of us, usually if he's a Scorpio, I will use my pattern recognition as well as my special interest in astrology to come to the, not conclusion, but to the working mentality here that if this guy's a Scorpio, there's likely to be issues of power tussle. So if this guy from the onset is already presenting behaviors where I feel like there's a little bit of tension of power, and it's not in the flirty type, it's more just like him being a bit too feminine to recognize that he's the man and he should chase me and he should do as I fucking say, then this isn't going to go anywhere. It's not going to work. And there's no reason for me to be trying to hack away at it and change it. Because the negative side of engaging with a Scorpio man, when you know that this power tussle is, he's going to become negatively obsessed with you. And obsessed is not really where you want to be with men. I think the word obsessed, right? We should try and do away with it. You know what I want to be obsessed with? Myself. And if you are neurodivergent, you're more prone to developing obsessions. That's why neurodivergent women need to become really, really obsessed with self-improvement. Become really, really, really fucking obsessed with getting the life you want for yourself. Because once you form an obsession over something, your desire to dip yourself into it will be relentless. So I have an ongoing obsession with improving myself, and I also have an obsession with creating the life I want for myself. But the obsession isn't like interfering with my life or keeping me up at night or making me erratic. It's just that I'm fixated on it to enough of an extent where the obsession serves me. But if you're prone to developing special interests and men are your special interest, and you know you're likely to form obsessions over men, you're in danger, girl. You're in danger. Because you could be using that energy to instead obsess over yourself, obsess over how that man talks to you. You see how you're reading into men's messages to try and tell yourself that he fancies you and he likes you. Read into it and be sure about, actually, I don't like the fact that he replied to me in that way. So I'm going to pause, reflect, possibly ruminate if that's your style. But make sure you're ruminating in the direction of, I deserve better. I'm not going to have that. Rather than, oh, he's giving me drips and drops of attention, so now I'm going to form an obsession over him because he doesn't want me, but I really want him. And this guy seems a lot more interesting because he showed interest in me, but he's not showing enough interest for me to be sure that he likes me. So the wonder becomes addictive. The mystery becomes bigger than what it is. That man is not mysterious. You're just neurodivergent and you don't know how to diversify your interests. So you pour all of your special interest energy into that man. That man is not that interesting. Sorry to break it to you, girl. And you don't need to wait for a formal diagnosis to start to join the dots. Because I've been joining a lot of dots and I'm like, yeah, I know exactly. That's why I'm very, very rigid. This is something that used to be a ongoing thing when I used to be in therapy. Guys, I was in therapy for 6 years. And it's not because it took 6 years for me to like, oh, all this damage and all this trauma. 6 years in. No, it's because like I was really, really passionate about learning about how my mind worked. And I really, really, really still miss my therapist. Sometimes I still cry about my therapist. I'm going to try not to cry now because I really miss her. But where I'm going with this is 6 years in therapy has meant that I'm able to recognize in hindsight that what me and my therapist spent a lot of time talking about is how rigid my mindset is when it comes to men. And I think that she was doing her job, rightfully so, in trying to encourage me to question my own ideas and to encourage me to see the other side of things, where it's like, but why does a guy need to have money for you to be with him? And this used to bother me a lot because it's like, I'm like, girl, because my therapist is a woman, black woman. I'm like, in my head, I'm like, girl, what do you mean? Why does he need to have money? Why shouldn't he? It's literally a man. But I understood as well that like modern therapy, coupled with the society we live in, it's very rare that you're going to come across people that support the idea that a woman should lead with a man's financial situation as a deciding factor on whether she's going to date him. That doesn't sound very, what even is that word? Understanding. I'm not an understanding babe when it comes to men, because that's what's kept me alive. That has saved my life, you know. Genuinely. So that was the one time where there'll be pushback between me and my therapist, because she'll be like trying to understand, like trying to get me to go deeper with this whole idea of like, but why do you only need to date a man who has money? Why can't you give men a chance? I'm like, because men don't deserve a chance just because. And I found it hard to explain that to her. But where I'm going with this is that my therapist will always point out that I have a very rigid, there's like a rigid line where we don't really cross. Like, it's hard for me to cross that line. It's hard for me to like shake that line out a bit and be more flexible. It's because there's sometimes I think you need rigidity. If you're a woman and you date men, there has to be rigid parameters that you draw between yourself and men. There has to be. Because I think that as a neurodiverse person, rigidity is a very, very interesting thing. This is going to be very controversial to say, but I do think that neurodiverse people, we actually really like rules. But let me finish. Wait. I'm dropping the landing gear. Let me fucking land this plane. We as neurodiverse people, we actually appreciate rules because we need to know what rules to break so we can enjoy breaking them. But also, the reason why I value rules is because I need clarity. Guys, I'm very literal. Sometimes people are being sarcastic to me and I'm like, wait, really? Are you being serious? And they're like, no, I'm being sarcastic. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that's awkward because I was about to start feeling sorry for you and ask you if you need any help. But I've learned that as I get older now, I actually enjoy playing into that dumb thing a little bit. Like, I really enjoy playing dumb. I fucking love it because being too literal in how you understand people's sarcasm is a form of playing dumb. Because here in the British Isles, sarcasm is very common. We are sarcastic people for the most part. But when men are trying to be sarcastic with me or when men are trying to run jokes, I like to pretend that I don't know they're being sarcastic and I like to be really literal. Sometimes I'll make a really snarky response like, oh, I didn't really understand your joke. Oh, that's really weird because I thought you were the kind of guy who's going to take care of me. Oh, that's a shame. And now he's got to retract his joke now because the joke didn't land. And I'm like, oh, you've given me the wrong impression about yourself, sir. But where I'm going with rules and rigidity is that as a neurodivergent woman myself, I love making up arbitrary rules. I love it. I love it because that's what's kept me alive, guys. You think men don't have it out for me? Do you think men aren't trying to get rid of me? You think these men don't... These niggas wish I'd wake up and fucking die. God forbid. Back to sender. Back to your mum, bruv. They wish I would stop being who I am because in me existing, I'm encouraging other women to think like me. And the more women who think like me, the less pussy there is to go around for these men. But why rules matters is because the rules I'm talking about, it's not these rigid rules of like, oh no, I can't step over the pavement on this side. I'm not that type of neurodivergent, even though I love you guys who are like that, who can't step over a crack on the pavement. I don't give a fuck, I'll walk on that crack. Superstition doesn't scare me. I'm covered in the blood of Jesus. I don't give a fuck about your superstitions, bruv. But where I create my own arbitrary rules that people don't understand is, to me, it's a rule that if a man doesn't have money, I'm not going to look at him romantically. Like, I've genuinely trained myself to not be turned on by a man who is good looking but cannot do anything for me. And also, when I'm in social interactions with men, I actually think that I'm quite foul to talk to, you know? Because if it's a guy who I know he's not my type, like, if I've assessed that you're not likely to create the life that I want, or you can't even facilitate the lifestyle that I want, let alone create, because it's not a man's job to create a life for me. I've got my life. He needs to facilitate the parts that he needs to facilitate in it. If you can't fit that role, I'm going to give you very dead energy, and I don't care about being seen as fun, easygoing. I actually don't care if a man has the impression of me that I'm boring. I like that. Yeah, you should think I'm boring so that you will not be incentivized to come and talk to me. Now, another thing that's interesting about me as a neurodivergent woman is I use going nonverbal as well. I love a good nonverbal moment where like a man's talking to me, I'm like, I genuinely enjoy going nonverbal to men. But what's interesting about neurodivergent women when they're in arguments with these men that they got no business being with is, please tell me what, because I used to be like this before I knew I was neurodivergent. I noticed that when a man is gaslighting me and I'm trying really hard to not cry, but I'm also trying to find examples of that time when he did the thing that I'm telling him he's done again, but he's asking me, give me examples. And I'm like, I go nonverbal. Or if a guy's like, what's wrong? And I'm just like quiet. Like, for some reason, I can't say it. Like, I find myself, the words are trapped behind my teeth. I'm trying to talk, but for some reason, I've gone quiet. I can't say it. That's it now. Non-verbal now. This is it. That's when you really see the neurodivergent side of me. Thankfully, I ain't been in that situation with a man since I was in my early 20s where I'm so upset that I'm non-verbal. Because now it's like, if a man pisses me off enough for me to have to reconsider being with him, first of all, you wouldn't even be able to see me to let alone ask me what's wrong, because I'll remove myself from the environment. Secondly, I am no stranger to being very direct in telling men that they've pissed me off. I'm very direct and I'm very unempathetic when I'm doing that. Like, I think as a neurodivergent person, I have a side to myself that's very unempathetic. Like, I've taught myself to not have empathy for men anymore. Unless the situation is nuanced enough where, fuck man, that looks painful. Like, if someone was to get knocked over, if a cyclist was to get knocked over by a car and I'm right near the situation and the man is a cyclist, the cyclist is a man, I'm going to stop, I'm going to call an ambulance, I'm going to sit with the person and help out. Because what the fuck, man, that's a life or death situation. But if a man has lied and cheated and his excuse is because he's having bad mental health, I don't feel sorry for him. I don't feel sorry for most men, to be honest, because it's like, with all the privilege that you guys have accrued for yourselves and with all the patriarchy that you continue to reinforce every day, how has a woman managed to out-earn you? How has a woman managed, despite women already being blocked off from opportunity, despite women being, for every dollar you make, we make about 70, 80 cents. How have we managed to still out earn you in a world where we're also dodging being murdered every day? Every time a woman steps out of the house, she chooses the risk of losing her life just by being outside. And despite that, we're still out earning you. And we're still mentally regulating ourselves. I don't really feel sorry for men. And lack of empathy is a very common trait amongst autistic people. Doesn't mean all autistic people lack empathy, because there are autistic people who are so empathetic that like they feel sorry for their stuffed animals. I love you guys. I'm not that kind of neurodivergent though. Like, I'm the kind where I know how to switch off my empathy. But at the same time, I think it's because I'm so hyper empathetic deep down that I've had to learn to just stop doing that, because it doesn't serve me with men. So I reserve the rest of my empathy for women and children. But with men, it's like, oh my God, you should see me in action. I'm actually very apathetic. And that's why a dominatrix suits me. Very, very apathetic. Incredibly apathetic. And the reason I say that's an autistic trait is because there are people who have autism, and the way their autism works is like, it's not that they don't care about other people, but I think for some of them, they were raised in an environment where they were so bullied by their parents and so neglected by their caretakers and the community and the world surrounding them that they don't even nurture their own emotions to a deep enough extent, let alone feeling any reason to nurture someone else's emotions. And that autistic trait is more common amongst men, I've noticed. For obvious reasons. I mean, generally speaking, men aren't raised to prioritize the emotions of other people unless that's something that their caretakers have gone out of their way to genuinely instill that. But for me, I learned as I got older that like there's an apathy in me that I've learned to lean into. So if I see a man who's got a fucking sob story, I don't feel sorry for him. I'm just like, damn, that sounds crazy. Hope you get the help you need. Prayer emoji. I'm not about to lean into that, because you know what it is, yeah? Neurodivergent women are more likely to be over empathetic in an overcompensating kind of manner. And in effect, they are the ones who end up in the most abusive, scary situations. Also because they're used to being uncomfortable. They're used to being uncomfortable. So when you're used to being uncomfortable and you're used to having your needs silenced, when men are doing things that are clearly making you unhappy and uncomfortable, you go nonverbal and you take it. Or you tell yourself that, I mean, like, no one's perfect. I mean, I've dealt with worse. Just because you've dealt with worse doesn't mean you need to live through bad. Just because you've experienced worse doesn't mean that you should just like take a guy who's treating you horribly because, I mean, at least I'm not being hit. At least I'm not being called names. He's still negligent to you though. So this is why I'm like, as a neurodivergent woman, you got a lot of work to do. We need to talk about limerance, but I've spoken about limerance a lot already, so there's not much to say here other than you already know what the deal is here. You're daydreaming about a stupid man. You're having limerance over a guy who don't like you, because limerance is only for people who don't like you in the way you like them. Stop that. And also, limerance and maladaptive daydreaming, they kind of intersect. Maladaptive daydreaming, I do this a lot. I didn't know that that's a thing. I thought everyone did that. But I genuinely have the most vivid, clear, so vivid that I can actually feel the feelings that I'd feel if I was actually in that moment. Like, if I want to create a scenario in my head where I'm having a really lovely moment with a guy that I like, not only will I see it vividly, I'll also experience the emotional benefits of that briefly. Like, I'll feel the fleeting feelings of it. And for a while, I can be in that daydream and not be in reality. I think it's like a mildly dissociative thing. But maladaptive daydreaming, you can use that to your benefit. Start maladaptively daydreaming about when you're going to be with these rich men who are taking care of you and you're lifting a finger and these niggas ain't doing nothing but making your life easier. Nobody is controlling you. Nobody is locking you away in a basement because they have money. Stop doing that. Start maladaptively daydreaming about the life you want. Yes, because the more you daydream about it, the closer to reality it feels. And this leads to my next point, right? When you're a neurodivergent woman, don't try and lie. Don't tell me you don't do this. You be having conversations in your head, yeah, based on how you think it's going to go with that person. And this is low-key my secret weapon. I don't mind telling it, but this is how I'm able to be so blasé and chill when I'm talking to guys that maybe I like, or guys who I'm trying to figure out something about them. I will practice conversations in my head with that guy in a maladaptive daydreaming kind of vibe. So let's say I'm imagining being at dinner with him. If he's invited me out to dinner and it's 2 days before our dinner, I'm already imagining what our dinner's going to be like, what he's likely to talk to me about based on so far what he said to me. What questions do I want to ask him? How is he likely to answer those questions? I need to think of 3 alternative ways he might answer those questions. And now I need to think of 3 alternative ways that I'm going to answer his 3 alternative answers. Because when I get to that date, at least one of the things that I imagined happens. And then when I say my part, I get the result I want because I say it in such a chilled way. That's why you need to practice lying to men. Maladaptively daydream about the lies that you're telling these men so that the lie feels so close to reality that your brain can't tell the difference between whether it's a truth or a lie. So when you're telling it like it's a normal truth. But this takes practice and training. And I believe if you're neurodivergent, you've got it in you to make your self-development your special interest. Yes. And I don't give a fuck about rigid thinking doesn't serve us. We need to be more flexible in our thinking. Yeah, I agree. Rigid thinking doesn't serve us if we're discussing favorite foods and favorite hobbies, because you do want to diversify your life palette. But when it comes to rigid thinking, when it comes to men, yes, you should be rigid in your thinking because men can kill you. And I think that it serves you to be rigid more than it serves you to be, I'll just go with the vibe, go with the flow. There is no flow to go with. What flow? What vibe? That man hasn't got a plan. He's just trying to see if he can sleep with you and get out as soon as he gets in. Okay. I think the last thing as well that I want to talk about before we wrap this up is fearing conflict. I think a lot of neurodivergent women, they panic at the idea of being in an argument. They don't know how to stand up for themselves because they were taught to believe that they're stupid. Or when they found themselves in past scenarios that were conflict-based, they didn't really know how to speak at the time. They went nonverbal, and that was seen as them being cowardly, or they didn't know how to articulate themselves. And then when they get home, they're beating themselves up, wondering and thinking about what they should have said. So how I get redemption for the child and the young girl I used to be who was like that is, in the moment, I talk my shit. But I talk my shit in a way that is concise. You have to stand by it. Stand by your words. Become brave about that. Because I do think that, as much as there's this not very helpful stereotype that neurodivergent people are geniuses, I do think that we have genius traits in us though. I really do. And I know for me, I'm so specific about the life I want that I'm grateful that this is my special interest. And I know I'm going to get there. And you know what? The thing about special interest is that you don't need other people to like your interest for it to be special to you. So this is why I don't need anybody. If everybody in the world right now, including my bestest of best friends, if everybody disagreed with me about the way that I view men, in the sense that I think men should be providers, and if I'm going to share my life with a man, he'll be providing for me. If everybody disagreed with that, best believe I'll still do it. If anything, that will inspire me to be like, I told you I was going to do it, and now I've done it. Now what? And don't come and ask me for no help when I get there, because when I was doing it, you was trying to tell me that it's impossible, it's unrealistic, and I should diversify my line of thinking and widen my horizon. Well, now look, because now I've got the life I want. I can't wait to be like, I told you so, because it will happen. And you know what? There are things that have quietly been happening in my life that I'm like, see? Oh, there's no one here to say I told you so to you, but I just knew it. I just knew it was going to happen because I was neurospicy enough to be hard-headed enough and rigid enough to be like, I'm not accepting anything that's outside of this. This is what I want for myself, specifically this. So yes, you can learn a thing or two from the neurodivergent people who are specific about their life and they go for it. But if you're a neurodivergent woman, you owe it to yourself to wake up out of that pushover daydream that you're in. Because this is your only life and you only get one shot. There's no do-overs. Yeah? Yesterday is gone. Oh yeah, today, what will you do differently? So I implore you, whether you're officially diagnosed or not, if you know you're neurodivergent, You need to start creating tools for yourself to make it easier, because the most important thing when dating men is self-regulation. Men are not here to regulate you. You regulate yourself. Men are here to enhance your life. They're not here to be your stuffed animal for comfort. If you need a support animal, genuinely get an animal, but men are not the support animals that you think they are. I wish you all the best on your journey as a human being. And if you are going to seek an assessment, then I would honestly urge you to pursue it if you think you've got enough reason to. But if you don't think you have enough of a reason to pursue an assessment, like if you're like myself, where you just know, when you know, you know, when you know, you know, when you know, you know, then own it. Own your full self. And don't be scared. Don't be scared to go for the life you want if you're going to have a man in there, because I promise you, you can find it. And there are so many neurodivergent women who I've come across and they're living the life that they want. And I'm like, oh, it makes sense that you're neurodivergent. It makes so much sense. I get it now. See, the men who are like, oh, I love crazy women. I love women who drive me mad. It's the neurodivergent women they're talking about. It's us. Anyway, take care. Enjoy the rest of your time spent on planet Earth. And as always, I'll catch you in the next episode.